Did you know there are 8 areas where you might be having waste that is directly affecting your team performance and your overall productivity? Mind-blowing! Today we are covering the 8 areas where you might be having waste and how is it that you can reduce that waste to increase your productivity. This is what is called to achieve more by doing less. Welcome to the Leadership Boat. So this is one of our waves about lean team management. Our waves is what we call our classes or our episodes. And we call them waves because we're on a boat. Today we're talking about what are the 8 areas where you might be having waste and how is it that you can reduce this waste in the context of team management. So let's go into the different areas of waste, and this is a principle. This is something that comes directly from lean management, directly from the foundation of lean management, which is the Toyota production system. So this is one of the key practices that allows Toyota to really take charge of the automotive market. And they were competing with big companies like Ford Motors at the time, and Ford Motors was also known for having the assembly line, which increased productivity, and still Toyota was able to surpass it. And they were able to surpass it because they looked not just at things to improve, but also at things to reduce. And where is it that they could reduce waste? And this is a big mind shift, even when it comes to our individual productivity, thinking about where is it that we are wasting time instead of trying to do more. What is it that we can do less that is really affecting our productivity? So let's take a look at the different types of waste and how that applies to your team. So here the first one is a cracked glass, and this is an example of a defect. Now, defects in your products is one type of waste because you will have to replace your product. So defects is the first one. And the first thing you can do is to really look at how many defects you have and what is it that you can do to prevent them. So for example, when it comes to software development, defects are bugs or are features that are not working properly or things that make the software crash. Other defects when it comes to other areas of your business, it might be your physical products if you really produce something physical. When it comes to technical things or when it comes to marketing or other areas of your business, defects are things that you do and that you don't do well. So things that are not going well. So for example, defects could be how many times do you screw up a sales call, or how many times do you drive your traffic away, or how many times do you communicate in a way that is not aligned with your brand and therefore people just move out and they go somewhere else. So this could be defects in different areas of your business. And reducing defects is one way for you to increase your productivity. Obviously, if you don't have defects or if you have less defects, then your productivity is increasing. The second type of waste is overproduction. So let's write here, overproduction. So this means that you're doing too many things. So for example, in marketing, it can be that you're doing too many things, way more than what you need to reach your marketing results. The same thing for sales, the same thing for software development. So overproduction is when you are trying to do way more things than what you actually need to do. The third type of waste is waiting times. So if you need to wait for a reply from your customer, if you need to wait for someone else from another department to get back to you, that is waiting time, and that is a type of waste. So waiting time. Transportation. Maybe if you're working in tech companies, this doesn't apply so much because you don't have physical products. However, you can think about transportation in other types of translating it to other areas. So for example, when it comes to business decisions, maybe that decision needs to navigate a lot of different departments until it's done. So that could be an example, although this one is most likely the one that you're going to use less unless you have a physical product. So let's write transportation here. It might also apply to your team in case you have a remote team and you need to meet every month. For example, that could be an example where transportation might be also wasteful, so you can look into that. Then you have unused talent. Unused talent, which is a shame of a waste. So this, let's say that you have people in your team who have more skills or skills in different areas that are not necessarily linked to exactly what they are doing. You have skills, you have knowledge, you have abilities within your team that you are not using. That is a new talent. And maybe you could use these tools, you could use this knowledge, and you can use this potential to improve certain things in your business or to achieve better results in a different area. So if you have someone who works in administration, for example, but someone who knows a language that you don't have in your marketing team, maybe that person could still help you. Of course, that's not the core of that person's work, but this could be an example. Another example has to do with personality strengths. So, for example, you might have someone in your team who is very organized, and maybe you have people who are very creative. And if you don't look into these personal characteristics, then that's a new talent, because maybe the person who is organized, they could actually help you to organize your workflow, and they could help you to be more organized and to achieve certain goals. And the person who's more creative could, help you to think a little bit more outside of the box. So if you don't use the skills, then that's a new talent as well. Then we have inventory. So inventory is all of the things that you have that are not, that you kind of have for your own production, for your own work that you're not using. So for example, if you produce any kind of marketing materials that you're not using, if you have certain web pages that are not being used, if you have some parts of your software that have become redundant and that you don't need anymore, but they're still there. So that could be counted as inventory, things that are there for you to do your work, but that you're not really using. So they are kind of like wasting space in a way, even if they're not necessarily physical like the software. So then we have this little person, and this little person represents motion. So this is human movement that might be not very productive, and that might be wasting your time. So for example, if you have a remote team, if you need to meet every month, there is time that people are going to waste in a way for them to move to meet every month. So of course that it's up to you to evaluate if that's considered a waste of motion or a waste of transportation. That's up to you to consider what is a waste and what is essential for how you want to work. It's up to you to define where the limit is of the waste, but this is something to consider. So maybe you have a distributed team and people need to move around. Maybe you have different departments, like people spread out and in different rooms with different departments, and maybe it would be more effective if they were not by departments, but if they were sit together based on the product, for example, and then you would have the product manager, the marketing, the salesperson, and the developers of the same product all together. So that's when they need to talk. They don't need to go from one room to the other and talk to each other, but they can actually just, talk to each other without having to move. So that could be an example. And the final type of waste is over-processing. So doing more than what is required by your customer. So this could be, for example, developing way more features or refining little details of your features that are not necessarily required by your customer, or doing certain things in your processes that are not necessarily required. So when it comes to graphic design or when it comes to marketing, maybe there are little details that you want to tackle and that you want to improve. And though they go beyond what is necessary for you to achieve your goals. And it might be that you still want to be perfectionist, that you still want to do that. So it's up to you again for you to draw the line where the waste is. Where does the waste start? Is it okay for us to, delay something for 2 or 3 months for it to be super perfect? Or do we really need to get going and we just need to have the bare minimum requisites for it to work, for it to generate results, and then the details can be added later on. So it's up to you for you to draw where the line is of where something starts to be a waste or not. These are the different types of waste for you to consider that you might be having with your team, and how is it that you can reduce this waste. So these are the 8 different types of waste from lean management, from the Toyota production system originally. And these are things that you can look into your team. And I would recommend that you look at your team, look at each of the things that you are producing, and try to identify where are some areas where we are actually wasting some kind of resource, time, material, talent, etc. So what are some, for example, here in a new talent, what are some personal characteristics that people in my team have that I'm not using, and how can I use them? So here in inventory, what are some things that we have that we're not using? And maybe we can either get rid of them or maybe we can find a way to use them. So maybe if there is some marketing materials that we are not using, maybe we can take advantage of those existing materials and use them for some smaller event that you're going to have, or to use them for something else. So how is it that you can reduce this waste? And also make sure that if you reduce your inventory that is being wasted right now, that you don't then replace it with more inventory also to be wasted. So in waiting time, maybe what are the times that we are waiting for each other, and how is it that we can review our process to decrease those waiting time? So the waiting time is also related to what we saw before when it comes to the spaghetti diagram and how things are just shifting from one place to the other. And sometimes we are just waiting for a reply. So that could be an example of a waste of time. Then overproduction, this is something that I see really, really often, especially in small companies, in startups. We or people in startups usually try to do a lot of different things that don't necessarily bring them the return that they want. So maybe they want to develop a lot of features that are not necessarily needed for the customer. Maybe they want to do a lot of marketing things that look nice but don't necessarily bring them the revenue. So really looking at how many things you are doing in your department and in your team, and really measuring them against what you really need to achieve your goals. And maybe there's a lot of things that you're doing that are not affecting your goals positively, and they are just taking time and other resources from your team. So that could be a very good example of that. Which one is the one that is really affecting your team performance the most? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. You can also share these comments with us, and that is going to inspire other people who are in similar situations to you. So definitely let us know. And next wave, which means the next episode or the next class, we are going to be talking about how to prevent defects from happening. So that's going to be also super cool, and it's going to be the last wave on this series on lean team management. So subscribe if you haven't yet. Welcome aboard, and I will catch you on the next wave. Bye.